Dr. Babatunde Alayọ. He is the General Manager, Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. He will be speaking on the topic. Lagos State Decarbonization Journey, Strategy, Success, and the Road Ahead. With a clapping ovation, can we bring to the podium virtually Dr. Babatunde Alayọ?
But I also keep it very brief. So I'll be talking really, quickly on the decarbonization experience and the strategy that we have in Lagos State. So as we all know, Lagos is the state that has the smallest landmass in Nigeria with the largest population. So you have a huge population density. With that population density comes a high pollution density, because really pollution is secondary to the activity of people, right? Industrial activity, vehicular activity. The vehicular activity in Lagos is about 100 times more than what you find in the other average states, right? So it calls to question how much carbon and how much emissions we have. So there are 4 or 5 major sources of emissions in Lagos. The first one is vehicular, which is because everybody wants to drive to their work, or everybody wants to drive around town by themselves. The second one is stationary generators. Every house used to have a generator until very recently, because people need to power their homes. The third one would also be stationary from cooking. So you have a lot of cooking emissions from people who still use kerosenes, who still use firewood to cook, who still use coal. You may not think that it is common for people to use firewood, but you would then realize that we have abattoirs, we have fish processing zones where women still have to process food in different ways. And of course, processing fish, for instance, fish roasting is mainstay, is one of the very important and common ways of preserving fish. So we have those activities in different categories. Then we have industrial. Industrial emissions are huge. We have 12 industrial zones in Lagos, and each of the industrial zones will house up to 100 industries or manufacturing companies, in their own sizes. So all of those industrial zones have emissions, and of course it means that there's a lot of emissions. There's a lot of greenhouse gas from there. Definitely need to monitor, measure, and then strategically reduce these carbon emissions. So I'll be diving right deep into our strategy. First one is that you cannot monitor, you cannot solve a problem you don't understand. So we clearly have done a lot of work in understanding the different sources and how we can help address the problems with each of the sources. So for vehicular, for instance, over the next couple of weeks, you would hear a lot of conversations around the sustainability conference, and the major thing around it is that we have data from the past 5 years. Every vehicle that has been driven in Lagos that does their MOT, or what we call vehicle inspection service in Lagos, they have had their data collected. So the data we have collected, the emissions data rather, so the data we have collected has helped us sort of build an emission expectation for Lagos. And this data has been analyzed, we have run through it. We know the kinds of vehicles that people have, we know the kinds of areas where people go around with these vehicles. So what we have now done is to be able to set emission standards. We have agreed on emission standards to say that if your vehicle is older than maybe 12, 15 years old, depending on how much emissions come from your exhaust, you may not be able to drive in certain areas. So we'll now label some areas as green zones, and those areas will then see less trucks and heavy polluters. So that is on the one hand. The second level would be for cooking emissions. So depending on which sector it falls, most of the cooking emissions are from private cooking at home and then commercial cooking. So for the commercial cooking at abattoirs, we make sure that people are not burning cow skin with tires. We make sure people are not trying to roast fish in very unhygienic and not environmentally friendly ways. So we are promoting cheap alternatives like the fish kilns that can sort of take in the smoke and filter it before it goes into the environment. The third one will be industrial. So over the next couple of weeks, we will be launching the Lagos Carbon Registry. And this registry is supposed to help us properly document, the emissions that we have from industrial activity, from vehicle activity, from even the home, the generator activity. Thankfully, it's now getting increasingly cheaper, to use NEPA, the grid electricity. Well, it is expensive, but it is still cheaper than using petrol or diesel, right? So most people will still use their bande electricity and then be able to account for how much of energy they are burning. So on our own side, for Lagos, well, we've set up a registry that is able to document the carbon emissions over over the next couple of years, and then we can be set for the trading that is to come. So if you can see my screen, I don't know, but this is really just the carbon registry. I'll run through these slides quickly so that you may be able to tell the kinds of things that we're doing. Can someone confirm that you can see, please? If you can. Well, I assume you can. So this is our emission equivalent, how much of emissions that we have in Lagos or that we have seen and studied in Lagos. And Lagos has proper documentation for a lot of these things, right? So the second slide talks about why we need a carbon registry. You cannot mitigate what you have not measured. So for climate change mitigation, for public health purposes, to drive innovation, for economic opportunities, and a couple other things, there's a way it works, right? It tracks emissions, it does the cap and trade system, it gives you carbon credits and carbon offsets. It has its own benefits, and it helps you with transparency. Of course, it's only a registry because it's a transparent process. This presentation is not specifically, supposed to talk in depth on our strategy, but this is just one of the few things. I think I have made most of the points earlier. So we have developed a flowchart. We are launching it in a couple of days. On the 12th of September, we'll be launching it in Lagos. So we have done our registry portal. We have reviewed the laws. We have done an air pollution mapping across Lagos. We have done the mapping of industrial activity and industrial districts. Corporate entities are already onboarded. They have been onboarded on it. We have the stakeholders agreement scheduled for the 11th, and then the launch on the 12th. So the architecture is here. I'm sure by the time we launch it in public, then you can have access to it. But it's just to show you that we're not sleeping. I mean, Lagos is never joking about these things. So, I'm not sure whether this front end and back end access is very important, but the most important thing for us is that we have done our mapping, we have done our work, and we are really setting the pace for what we're about to embark on. We hope that over the next couple of years, by 2035, Lagos would have reduced up to about 25% of our emissions, and then we can be the lead states that other states can sort of learn from. So for me, I think that we are very strategic in our approach, right? From documenting emissions, identifying the sources, yes, documenting, mapping the pollution map of Lagos, or mapping pollution across Lagos, and then documenting the carbon footprint of Lagos. With that documentation, then we can proceed to actual implementation or actual trading of carbon or carbon sinking. If you have a forest, you probably can sink carbon and get some money for your forest, because some other people are in excess and they must be seen sinking somewhere, so that we can trade appropriately. So I'll just stop here. I think that the decarbonization agenda is more than important. I think that it is high time we started taking it very seriously. Lagos is holding it by the neck, and there's no better time to pull everybody else into the net than now. On this note, I would like to say again, thank you for having me over. Thank you for this opportunity to speak and share with this organization and with the good people that are on the other end of this screen. Thank you very much, and have a lovely afternoon.